In my opinion, I always say there can be no great employee advocacy without internal marketing. Do they really understand what makes us great? Do they know what our value proposition is and why customers should choose us over choosing the competition? Those basic elements, I should say, of brand engagement or internal brand engagement, a lot of companies unfortunately make errors in judgment in that regard. And so that's for me the biggest mistake that they make. They really don't understand, or they underestimate or maybe even overestimate how engaged employees are in our brand purpose and who we say we are.
Hi, I'm Andrew Seal, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast, How to Run a Happy Employee Advocacy Pilot. This podcast explores the best way for organisations to launch and sustain successful employee advocacy programmes. But you know, building employee advocacy is often described as a kind of complex and difficult task, and while there are many moving parts to coordinate, the way I see it is, at its heart, there's a simple framework which puts employees at the centre. Now, this is what I've been defining as happy employee advocacy. It's a programme which delivers results for the business by focusing first on what's in it for the employees. So I'm delighted to welcome Kerry Ann Stimpson as my guest today. Kerry is CMO of the JMMB Group, and she's also a fantastic podcast host. She hosts the Internal Marketing Podcast, and you know, it's one of my favourite podcasts. I think I've listened to nearly all of the episodes. You know, you've got some great guests on there, Kerry Ann.
Thank you so much.
Now, I've been following your content for quite a few years now. We met originally on LinkedIn, and you recently invited me to join you on the podcast, which was a great honour. It's definitely been an inspiration for me starting this podcast. So, welcome to the show, Kerry Ann. It's fantastic to have you here today, and it's lovely to see you again.
Thank you, Andrew. It is my pleasure to be here. And yes, we had a great time on my podcast. So I'm happy to do it all over again with you on yours. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, today we're going to be talking about how to kickstart employee advocacy with internal marketing. So I'm very excited to hear what you've got to say about this, Kerry Ann. So to kick off, you previously said the purpose of internal marketing is to increase employee engagement and the connection with the company's goals, and from that to foster employee advocacy of the company brand. So if we could start with, I suppose, kind of definitions, really. You know, could you first explain, in your view, what internal marketing is, and then describe the connection between internal marketing and employee advocacy?
Thank you. Well, the first thing I must admit is in doing all the reading and the research around the whole concept of internal marketing is that, and even the pundits will accept it, is that there isn't one, I believe, fully aligned on definition of internal marketing. I think depending on which subject matter expert you speak to or which internal marketing enthusiast, everybody has a slightly different understanding of what it is. But certainly for my purposes, the purpose of my content and my podcast, it's really around engaging employees in the purpose of the organization, the purpose, the mission, the vision, of course, sensitizing them on in the products, the services, and all of that. And the goal of internal marketing in this context that I certainly discuss it in is how do you leverage internal marketing with a view to and not only engaging employees in the first instance, but in empowering them in the process of being ambassadors of the company brand, right? Because also when we talk about internal marketing, I know internal comms, internal communication is a possible topic as well. And it's also a very popular discipline. And we certainly need internal communication when we do internal marketing. But the objective of internal marketing is taking it to the level of advocacy, of being an ambassador. So it's how can we create that emotional connection with our employees in the purpose or why, as an organization, who we are, what we want to accomplish, so that they are then not only engaged, but we can then empower them to be advocates externally to our current and prospective batch of customers. And so that's what really internal marketing is about. It's taking engagement to the level of external advocacy, empowering our employees to be awesome advocates, which I know is your area of focus, Andrew.
No, I love you. You're talking about empowering employees. I think that's what I found so kind of exciting about your approach. Is it is this idea of of really kind of working together around a kind of common goal, and then sort of setting the employees free to share that and talk about that with an external audience. I think it's really exciting. I'd never really looked at it in that way, or quite that way before. So I think it's been really really insightful. So moving on, do you think that the idea of employee advocacy do you think it's possible without good internal marketing? I mean, what do you think the consequences of not having good internal marketing are?
And that's another great question. So, in my opinion, I always say there can be no great employee advocacy without internal marketing. And the reason why that is that when we talk about employee advocacy, and really, and again, this is my working definition of employee advocacy, but when we talk about it, it's about how our employees allowing us to show up online. So it's what are our employees saying about us in all the spaces that they interact. So online is one space, whether they generate or curate or share content, repurpose content that connects to who we are as a company and what we do. But it's also about how they talk about us at the tennis club, in their place of worship, in their community events, even at the family dinner table. What are our employees saying? And in my view, internal marketing is what helps to drive those conversations. You can't have great employee advocacy without internal marketing, because if you're not doing the work of first engaging our employees in the purpose of who we are as an organization, why do we exist? Where do we want to go? What makes us great as a company? If all of that is not part of the conversation already internally, then what is it that we're going to be giving our employees to talk about, and so that for me is where internal marketing fits right into the foundation of why employee advocacy can be great. It's how are we doing that initial engagement with our team so that they understand the story, they get excited about the story, they're connected to that story. And once they are, then they're going to want to share it. And so that to me is why internal marketing is such a crucial part of employee advocacy as its very foundation.
No, I love that, and I think it's such a good point, because I've spoken to to many people who work particularly in big companies, but I think in small companies as well, where they don't necessarily they don't they're in their almost in their silo, I suppose, and they don't necessarily know that everything that's going on within the brand or the company, or the products, or how to describe the products or describe their purpose. And I think a lot of people don't actually know that information, do they? So you're absolutely right. How could you be an advocate if you don't have that kind of information to hand? It's almost a mum question, isn't it? How do you tell your mum what you do at work? You need to be able to explain it. That's great. Thank you for that perspective, Kerry Ann. So you've said in the past sometimes that internal marketing isn't always the most popular topic of discussion in marketing circles. Why would you say that is?
Well, I think the simple answer is that as marketers, and hey, I'm one myself, right? Because I'm a chief marketing officer in my day job, and so I'll say that the biggest reason why is likely because in marketing school we weren't taught about it, and I understand it, right? As marketers, our primary objective is to drive growth, of which is of course growth meaning revenue growth, and we do that in a number of ways, including building the brand, but ultimately marketers are taught to focus on the customer because hey, that's how a business makes money, and we get it and we're happy for our customers. And so as marketers, that's a discipline that we're in. It's how do we target external customers with a view to not only making them aware of who we are and what we have to offer, but why they should buy for us, and of course making it easy for them to do that. Now, with that kind of focus in the marketing discipline, we really are not given a wonderful vantage point, as far as I'm concerned, of the role that employees play in what we do as marketers, right? And so we tend to not realize that while we spend all of this awesome money and other resources in getting the message of the brand out there and telling customers and prospective customers about our awesome value proposition, we forget that when our customers engage us, they typically engage an employee of the company that we recommend, or they may engage an output of an employee because there are some companies where there's not much interpersonal exchange. It's probably a digital product that we're probably selling. But even in those instances, it is our employees who design those products. It is people who we contract and say, hey, we want you as part of our team, to deliver on our value proposition, to deliver on our brand promise to our customers. And so, what tends to happen is when the customers engage in that and it doesn't line up with what our marketing message says in who we say we are, then it tends to all fall apart at that point. And that's what a lot of marketers don't get. And so, it's very important, in my view, for marketers to understand the critical role that employees play in helping to deliver the brand promise as ambassadors of the brand themselves, whether we like it or not, or whether they like it or not. And so, again, it's so very important for us to get inside internal marketing as a key part of what we do.
That's so true, Kerry Ann. I mean, that was my experience when I did a marketing degree, and we didn't talk about internal marketing at all. I mean, that wasn't something that was mentioned, in any way, and even less so the idea, which is, I guess, a bit more kind of modern now, the idea of employee advocacy or employees actually communicating on behalf of the brand. But you're absolutely right. Most people's final interaction with the product or purchase is typically with a member of the team, isn't it? And if they're not part of that whole kind of communication model, then it's going to, as you say, it's all going to fall apart. That's really interesting. So moving on to more practical sides of it, I think in terms of employee advocacy, one of the biggest challenges when you're launching a pilot is getting employees on board with the idea so they see the value of it. There are lots of barriers to being an advocate. Can internal marketing help here?
Absolutely. And I first want to start off by saying, and it probably connects back to what I was sharing earlier, that internal marketing is really, in my view, the foundation of great employee advocacy. And what it really starts from is, what are we actually giving our employees to talk about? Right. So when a lot of companies think, oh, it's employee advocacy, and I'm gonna just look about how do we get this done? So maybe some companies may think we're just gonna generate some content and put it in a nice central location for employees to share, and then we give the edict, go forth and share. But the reality is that, again, if that emotional connection, if that passion between the employee and their own individual purpose is not connected to the company purpose, if they don't see their role in the wider vision, if they are not excited about who you say you are as a company, if they themselves are not enjoying their work life, let's just start there at the company, if they're not happy,
Good point.
then they really are not going to want to be excited or even minded to want to share anything about the company, much less whether or not you provide them with the content or not. And so, again, that's why internal marketing is important. It really starts with, what are we giving our employees to talk about, right? Because you can't engage them in the mission, the vision, the purpose if the mission, the vision, the purpose isn't worth sharing. It's also very important to recognize that the culture of the organization, how are you making your employees feel? Are you making them feel heard, valued? Do they really feel like they're part of what it is you say you are? And do they feel that sense of importance in that engagement? And so it's so very important, again, to make sure that what you have to tell, the story that you have to tell your employees, is great enough, and how they're engaged in that story is there at the base foundation of what it is you want to do. And then, having done that, and you do your internal marketing around that, then employee advocacy is going to be much easier thereafter to accomplish.
Brilliant, brilliant. So it's getting the culture's got to be right, and then you've got to be communicating what the business does, the values, the purpose, the brand, the messaging, so they understand it and they're excited by it, and then that's going to, well, obviously that's going to help them become advocates, but it's obviously going to excite them to be advocates. I guess that's step
Absolutely.
one, isn't it? Really.
Absolutely.
Do you think, just an aside on that, obviously that's helping them understand. What about communicating what's in it for them? Is that important, do you think? Why are they that part of internal marketing?
Absolutely. Well, I don't know if I would say what's in it for them, in as much as I would say, how are we showing them the alignment between their individual purpose or goals in life and their why, and how are we aligning it to the company purpose, right? So it's really about creating that base point of connection between the organizational mission, vision, purpose, and the employee's individual mission, vision, purpose as a person. And that's really what you're trying to accomplish. So, less so what's in it for me, because internal marketing is really inviting that conversation between the organization and employee. It's helping them to see not only why they're here, but why are we in this together? Why do we as an organization need you to be a part of our team to help us to achieve the objective? And one of the ways to do that is to create that connection between our purpose and your purpose as an individual. And once you're able to do that, then the light bulb is going to go off in the mind of the employee, because they're going to see their role in the bigger picture. And so that's what it is. It's creating that emotional connection more so than it is what's in it for
Yeah,
me per
yeah.
se. I think what's in it for me will probably come up in the employee advocacy discussion, when you want them to now take an action, or you hope that they take an action. And usually, for people to act, they do that when they see a personal benefit, not just the benefit to the company. But for internal marketing, it's first getting that alignment of purpose between the company and the individual.
Well, I love that perspective. So it comes down to having a conversation. You mentioned the idea of having an internal conversation, really, which
Yes.
it's a two way in that sense. Love that. A common concern I think you often have when you talk about employee, or when one talks about employee advocacy, is from the leadership, is that employees might be sharing something that's off brand. Can internal marketing help employees better understand the brand? I mean, you've mentioned obviously that it can in some ways, but can it help overcome some of those fears? Do you think, how could it overcome that?
Absolutely. Because again, if we are subscribed to the view that internal marketing is what comes first before employee advocacy, is that in internal marketing, if we're doing a good enough job of engaging our employees in our why or company purpose as an organization or business, or if we've done a good enough job of helping them to understand our mission or vision, how do we see ourselves? How do we see them culturally? How do we see our customers in terms of the customer experience? If we've done a very good job of setting up that legwork, then what you will have is not only a set of folks who are engaged, employees I'm speaking about now, not only will they be better engaged, but they'll also have a very acute understanding of who we say we are. And when you have employees who have an understanding and they are aligned with that understanding, again, going back to creating that connection of purpose between the company and the individual, then it's highly unlikely that you will have employees who are putting content out there or sharing things or sharing aspects even of themselves that do not align with the brand and who we say we are. I mean, if I may give a little personal experience here, I mean, I am CMO of a financial services group, and our core value, our primary reason for being as an organization is love. We love our customers, and we believe that our customers are human beings, every single one of them, no matter who you are, where you come from. And our role as an organization is to help you to experience love and to realize the innate greatness that is in each and every one of our customers. Now, you can imagine, of course, when we do our marketing communications and the loved themed messages that come out, if we had employees who didn't understand that or weren't aligned with that, then that's a problem. And so, we spend a lot of time and a lot of work from orientation and onboarding right throughout to help our employees to understand that purpose, to ensure that they have an individual alignment with that purpose. And so we typically have no challenges with employees who go out there and spout, let's say, anti Semitic content, because that's just not who we are. And that's not who they are either. And so again, that's what internal marketing does, is it helps to build that internal alignment so that you can with confidence allow your employees to step out. I like to say, I'm on a podcast here now with you, Andrew. My boss doesn't even know I'm here. Right? She has no idea. She hasn't vetted your question. She hasn't vetted my responses, because she has every confidence, not only because I'm an executive per se, but she has every confidence that who I am and who I say I am and my values align with the organization's purpose. And so she can sleep very well knowing that I'm here representing not only my own personal brand, but the company brand by default. And so it all lines up. Internal marketing makes you feel very comfortable that your people can show up and not do anything that's going to put the brand into disrepute.
That's brilliant. Well, there's so many good things you just said there, and obviously the brand purpose of kind of love. And isn't that amazing? What a great brand to
Yes.
work for. I mean, that must be. But also, I think what you're saying about it's kind of reducing fears and concerns on both sides, isn't it? Obviously, you mentioned your boss being very comfortable with what you're saying, so it's reducing fear on their part, but also on your part, because you don't need to worry, as you say. You're comfortable with the brand, the internal, and that the organisation is comfortable with you doing this. And it seems like without the internal marketing, I guess that's why maybe some businesses fall into problems because they haven't put that foundation in place that you have with your company.
Absolutely. And, if I may add, Andrew, that even as I talked about our financial brand, the one that I represent as a CMO being about love, it's not just about the company telling me that we love our customers and are you aligned? Do you love our customers too? They would have had to show that same love to me as an employee. They would have to show that same love to employees generally. Employees would have to be the ones feeling the love first before we can love our customers. And so, again, that's why that internal marketing piece is important, and making sure that your company purpose is solid, not just for who you say you are and showing up to your customers, but how you show up to your employees, so that when you do your internal marketing, it's authentic and it really is something that everybody experiences, both internally as an employee and, of course, ultimately externally as a customer.
Brilliant. I love that. I love that. So I'm just getting a clear picture now of how internal marketing can set this foundation, which can lead to employee advocacy. Do you see them as part of the same thing, or are they two different activities within an organisation?
I think one feeds into the other based on my experience and what I've seen. It's one feeding into the other. So, internal marketing typically would come first. Again, because you want to make sure that your people have that alignment, have that engagement, have that emotional connection to the company brand, its purpose, and so on. And then, having done that work, then I believe employee advocacy will be much easier to accomplish after that. So, it's getting the internal marketing right, so that when employee advocacy now has to be a part of the conversation, it tends to flow much easier from there.
Okay, that makes total sense. So on that basis, who do you think should own this within the company? Is it the internal marketing team, employee advocacy team, is it marketing, HR? How does that work?
That's a great question, and probably one of the most controversial questions that I've had to grapple with, even on my own podcast, because perhaps depending on who you speak to, it varies from person to person. I've heard some folks come out and straight up say marketing should own it. Some say it's HR, some say it's internal comms. I would like to think, and probably most folks will say I'm biased because I'm a CMO. I think ultimately the ownership, because it is engagement in the brand purpose, and I see the marketing officer as kind of the chief brand officer in a sense. I see marketing as the place where internal marketing should live. However, it's not something that marketing would be able to accomplish without the partnership of the people function, and certainly without the partnership of the internal communications function, which that function is an awesome function because of how it understands the intricacies of how to communicate with people internally. And so I believe the ownership starts with marketing, but marketing bringing that storytelling, that brand engagement, expertise, and knowledge to the table. Of course, the people function, some people call it HR, being that place that understands the employee, that's passionate about employee engagement and how to drive that. Both those two functions partnering with internal communications, wherever that sits, because I know that too will be another point of contention for another podcast, probably. But those three functions, to my mind, all working together is what will inure to internal marketing success. But I do believe the driver of it should be within the marketing function, but that's my view.
No, I think that's a fair point. I mean, it's interesting because when we've worked with clients, we've nearly always, in terms of employee advocacy, always started with the marketing teams, I think. But then very quickly, as you say, the people team have been involved, and then usually kind of part of the internal comms team have got involved in some way, which
Yes.
has been invaluable. I mean, my view would be to get those elements involved a bit earlier. I think because
Right. Yeah, but I wanted to highlight too, Andrew, that another reason why I think ultimately marketing is supposed to be the driver is that internal marketing really is about bottom line impact. And perhaps I haven't stressed to that enough in this conversation. It really is about bottom line impact. So when we talk about building the brand and driving growth through internal marketing, which is engaging and empowering employees to be advocates, ultimately marketing exists for bottom line impact. And so it's not just, we're not just engaging employees because it feels good to do so, or it's the right thing to do in the future of work. And all of those things are great benefits and offshoots of internal marketing, but it's about bottom line impact. And so again, as your marketing function that's responsible for building the brand and driving growth, and internal marketing being a key component of that, again, another reason why I believe it should sit there.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's music to my ears in the sense that talking about the bottom line, it is, a bottom line activity, and it definitely has to focus on that. I think the complexity sometimes I find is that you're absolutely right. The marketing team, they're understanding the external audience. They're used to the storytelling, telling the brand story and building those relationships externally. I think sometimes I found is that when the marketing team are running it on their own, one of the skills to do employee advocacy is they actually need those internal marketing skills to be able to talk to the internal audience to actually help them have the conversations, in the way that you've been describing, which is where if they haven't got those skills, that can be a little bit of a problem, to where bringing in the other support to either help them or give them this training to do that, I think, can sometimes help. But you're absolutely right. In my view, I'd agree. It has to start with the marketing, but it needs those other skills.
Yes, indeed.
What would you say were any common mistakes for people out there sort of thinking about doing this? Any common mistakes around internal marketing in the employee advocacy area that you see happening that perhaps people could learn about?
Well, for me, the biggest common mistake is companies make an assumption about how engaged their employees are in the brand and in the company purpose. A lot of assumptions are made, and usually the assumptions are on the positive side, meaning, well, we have employees, we probably pay them well, we provide a healthy work environment as far as benefits, the hard benefits, but they don't always do the homework necessary to understand, well, how engaged, if they're engaged, are our employees in who we say we are. Do they believe that they're a part of the company purpose? Do they understand their role in the realization of that? And do they really understand what makes us great? Do they know what our value proposition is, and why customers should choose us over choosing the competition? Those basic elements, I should say, of brand engagement or internal brand engagement, a lot of companies unfortunately make errors in judgment in that regard. And so that's for me the biggest mistake that they make. They really don't understand, or they underestimate, or maybe even overestimate how engaged employees are in our brand purpose and who we say we are.
Well, that's yeah, that does make a lot of sense actually. I think it's just people perhaps aren't just thinking about it in that way. In terms of employee advocacy managers who are looking to, start launching employee advocacy program, could you say there's one internal marketing activity perhaps they could start doing immediately, which would improve their chance of success?
Well, it's an offshoot of what I would have shared, where a lot of companies are not necessarily in tune to how engaged their employees are in the brand purpose. And so for me, the first place to start is to do that internal research, which includes, in my view, a combination of surveys and focus groups, where what you're really trying to do is to understand that level of engagement. And again, if I may draw from my personal experience, when we decided to go this route, we started out with a company wide survey, right? And it doesn't have to be super expensive, right? We're using a nice survey platform. We sent out a little survey, not very long, to our entire team of employees. Put a little sweetener in there as well. If you complete this survey, you get a chance to get a nice gift certificate. But nevertheless, the goal was to send a survey to understand, do our employees understand who we say we are as a brand? Do they understand our purpose? Do they have an appreciation of our products and services? Do they understand our value proposition? Do they know why we are better than competitors A, B, and C? And what we realized was quite insightful, which is why I recommend all internal marketers and folks who want to start the brand engagement and employee advocacy journey to do it, is that in our case, what we found is that employees were generally comfortable. They were happy working with the company. They thought the culture was great. They had a clear understanding of who we say we are as a business, and they felt that we showed up as that to them as well. But where we saw the weakness for us was they weren't really clear on our value proposition. They didn't really know what made us great. They didn't understand a lot of our products and services. And I guess we're in financial services, so not everybody gets that very quickly. But we really realized that we had a lot of work to do around empowering our employees with information around our value proposition, our products, and our services so that they could be better advocates and ambassadors of the brand. And so that's where we needed to do our homework, which was we started to do internal engagement and education and information dissemination activities to get our employees up to speed on that. We also did small focus groups as well with employees who are willing to share about their view of not just the culture and the company and what work life was like, but they also had concerns about how we could improve our competitiveness as a business. You know, those people who work on the front lines and engage with customers every day, they were able to tell us some of the biggest gripes and concerns that customers had. If they felt that they weren't empowered to be able to deliver on their brand promise, they gave us that kind of feedback as well, which we could, even if it's not something that marketing or internal comms or HR could use, that's information that we could feed to other areas of the organization, again, with a view to recognizing that engaging our people in our purpose, our mission, our vision, our value proposition, if we do that, then that's a win. That kind of information can be invaluable. And so that's my recommendation to folks is start there, whether you are at this stage of internal marketing or you're just rolling it out or you want to roll out your own employee advocacy program. Do that litmus test of your brand engagement with your team. See if they are aligned with the purpose, see if they understand it, see if they feel like it shows up that way to them as well. And also make sure they understand your value proposition, your solutions, your offerings as a company, and so that you can plug those gaps and plug those holes before you get going on empowering them to become ambassadors ultimately.
I mean, to be honest, Kerry Ann, this is huge because I think so many employee advocacy programs start by just, they just start in the sense that, we're going to start sharing content, they invite some people in, and then they just encourage people to start sharing. There's this whole thing beforehand where, I mean, it makes complete sense to me that you need to establish where the team is, where all the colleagues are in terms of their understanding of the brand and the brand values and the proposition, as you say. So it makes complete sense. And then I suppose, I assume this is an ongoing thing, is it? In the sense that you start running focus groups and workshops and other internal comms to share the brand proposition and so on. Is this an ongoing activity? I mean, how does that work?
Absolutely, because well, first of all, again, you do your research, you do your surveys and your focus groups to start, and you get a picture of what's occurring, and then you can put your plans in place to plug the gaps. But it's also something you have to keep doing routinely. And again, going back to the biggest mistake that companies make is they make assumptions around where their employees are and how engaged they are. Is that we would have done the initial survey and focus group, and we put in these wonderful programs in place to address. And then maybe about 6, 9 months later, we assume that, oh, it's working. Everybody's great now. Let's move forward. And then maybe you need to now do another test. How have things been going? Are they now up to speed? Do they feel that connection? Especially after major changes that would have occurred in an organization. Let's say you had a merger or acquisition, or you had a difficult quarter where profitability wasn't where it was supposed to be or not completely. Going back to your employees, how are they feeling? Are they feeling heard still? Or do they feel valued? Do they feel like they're a part of the conversation? And continuing to do that routine testing so that you're continuing to do the work. Again, if you're looking at internal marketing as a mirror of external marketing, we do quarterly surveys with our customers. or we do biannual surveys or even annual surveys. The point is, we continually check in with our customers to understand their experience and how they see us as a brand. We have to mirror and do the same thing with our employees, because if we miss a beat, then things could fall apart or go way down the road before we get a chance to catch it. Our customers will ultimately feel that impact. And of course, we'll feel it in the bottom line as well. So keep that routine check and testing going.
That makes sense. So do you think, as part of that routine check, if you have an employee advocacy program as well, is to actually look at what employees are sharing and talking about? I don't mean like monitoring every single thing, but in a general sense, and seeing how that marries up with the brand proposition. Should that be part of that cycle that you're describing?
Absolutely. And I mean, depending on the country that you live in, there are places where you can gather that kind of feedback, perhaps even without engaging your employees. So I often speak of a popular site called Glassdoor, which is
Mm-hmm.
that place where employees can go and openly talk about where they work so that other job seekers can make the determination if this is a company I want to work with. You can go on Glassdoor and see what folks are talking about you. You can go on social media and see what folks are talking about when they talk about their employer, whether they're doing it openly or anonymously. So, yes, there are all those places where you can go see what the conversation is like. Do people see this as a great place to work? And then from there, you can determine whether okay, there's something that's not lining up here, and then externally and internally you can do the work and address the issues there.
Brilliant, excellent. Well, that's been. I mean, thank you so much for all your insights today, Kerry Ann. That's been absolutely amazing, and I've learned a huge amount already. I always think you understand a certain amount about internal marketing, and then there's a whole nother kind of level of it, and that's been really, really valuable. So thank you so much. And I appreciate you're busy as well, so appreciate your time for that.
Oh, my pleasure. I love talking about this stuff, so it's fine.
No, it's brilliant. So finally, where can people find you, and is there anything we can do to help you?
Well, the easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn. So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not as frequent as Andrew is on LinkedIn with his awesome content, but I'm there. So if you connect with me or certainly send me a DM, I'm there, Kerry Ann Stimpson. But my podcast is also available wherever podcasts are. It's on all the major podcasting platforms. It's called the Internal Marketing Podcast, and it's a unique series. At last check, I don't know of any other podcast that solely focuses on internal marketing. And that's what the conversation is about. It's about empowering companies to understand how they can engage and empower employees to be awesome ambassadors of the brand. And it's available anywhere. Just Google the Internal Marketing Podcast, it's there. And I'd love to engage with anyone who wants to have this conversation further.
Brilliant. Well, I'll highly recommend your podcast. It's really, really insightful. So yes, please follow Kerry Ann's instructions and search the Internal Marketing Podcast.
Thank
Well,
you.
well, thank you again so much, Kerry Ann. It's been lovely to see you again, and thanks for your time, and see you again soon.
Thank you, Andrew, and all the very best to you.